Joel Grey guest stars in this episode, so you know what that means. Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. Im Voyager, a Voyager to Voyager. Fun fact, I've never actually watched Cabaret in any form, but I have seen Joel Grey perform that song on The Muppet Show, so I think I got the gist of it. This is a review of the Star Trek Voyager episode Resistance. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know what a Vulcan being tortured sounds like, be warned, spoilers beyond this point. So apparently, part of the backstory of this episode is that Joel Grey had been approached to appear in one Star Trek production or another for years, and he always said no. But when he got the script for this episode, he finally said yes. Was that the right decision? I'm sure it was the right decision financially speaking. I'm assuming they paid him. I mean, was it the right decision artistically? Let's find out. Neelix, Janeway, Tuvok, and B'Elanna are undercover on the street of an alien world. They've apparently come to barter for needed supplies, or possibly to buy drugs. But after Neelix leaves to go meet the man with the stuff, the cops show up. Tuvok and B'Elanna are arrested, and Janeway is shot. Before the cops can grab up Janeway as well, here comes Joel Grey screaming to the rescue. And I guess the heavily armed and ruthless police saw him coming and said, "Shit, it's Joel Grey, let's beat it." Because from there, we cut to the credits, and when we come back to Janeway, she's regaining consciousness at Joel Grey's place, and he's taking care of her. She's got a big green Band-Aid on her neck where she was shot, and he's offering her something to drink and promising to make her some soup, and he seems to think that Janeway is his daughter, a kind, benignly deluded old man who has formed a strong emotional attachment to the main character. I'm sure this will end non-tragically. Before we get too far in with the Janeway-Joel Grey story, Joel Grey's character is named Kalem, by the way, but fair warning, I might continue to refer to him as Joel Grey. I hope that's all right. Anyway, before we get too far into that, let's see what the deal is on Voyager. Apparently, and I hate to get all technical on you here, the ship ran out of go juice. Janeway, Neelix, Tuvok, and B'Elanna went down to the planet to buy some go juice, but then things went tits up as we saw. Luckily, Neelix was in the go juice dispensary when the others were arrested or rescued by Joel Grey, so when the coast is clear, Neelix calls the ship and beams up with the precious, precious go juice. Once the go juice is installed and the ship is running properly again, which takes about 30 seconds, Chakotay turns his full attention to the problem of the missing away team. The aliens who took them, the Mokra, dominate the planet with a totalitarian government. Chakotay brings Voyager closer to the planet so they can make contact, and the head man, Mr. Mokra himself, calls and says, "Hey, did you want something?" Chakotay tells him about their missing people and says they may have been arrested while they were on the planet. And Mr. Mokra says, "Yeah, that sounds like something we would do. We're space Nazis. I'll check around and call you back if I find anything." Mr. Mokra hangs up and Neelix turns to Chakotay and says, "I could be wrong, but I don't think that space Nazi is actually going to help us with this." Meanwhile, Tuvok and B'Elanna are in space Nazi jail, and they're going to be there for a while. Okay, back to Janeway and Joel Grey. Like I said, Joel thinks Janeway is his daughter, Ralkana. She says, "My name is Catherine Janeway," but Joel just goes along with it, thinking that she's telling him a story. She asks about her two friends who were arrested, and Joel tells her that they've been taken to the prison. Janeway decides that she needs to go to that prison and bust out Tuvok and B'Elanna, and Joel Grey says, "Yeah, let's go, you and me, father and daughter, and while we're there, we can bust out your mother too, who's been locked in there for years, as you know." Meanwhile, Chakotay meets with Mr. Mokra in an attempt to make contact with the captured crew members, but Mr. Mokra is like, "I don't know, as space Nazis, we really don't like it when strange aliens secretly visit our planet and try to buy our go juice." So that's going nowhere, and in the prison, Tuvok is taken away for interrogation because the space Nazis think he and B'Elanna are connected somehow to the resistance movement that's opposing their regime. So that's happening too. Okay, back to Janeway and Joel Grey. Space Nazi cops are swarming the area looking for Janeway. But Joel Grey isn't worried. He tells her that by the time the cops get around to searching this place, they'll be long gone. He starts collecting things for his wife, who he still insists they're going to break out of prison. a favorite dress of hers, a necklace that he gives to Janeway, telling her, "Your mother would love to see you wearing it." Janeway reluctantly accepts because it's clear there's no talking him out of it. He also shows her a box of letters he's been writing to his wife. He can't send them, of course. Space Nazis don't deliver letters to inmates. But he's written a letter to her every week since she's been away. Only this week's letter has gone missing. So he tries to remember what he wrote and tells Janeway all about it. He tells her about a walk he took on a cold morning, how he saw that they'd torn down an old building where his daughter and her friends used to play. He tells her about how it rained for 2 days, and he wonders if his wife can see the sky where they're keeping her. Janeway listens, but she's still not thrilled with the idea of taking this old guy along to the prison, but that argument will have to wait because the space Nazis are pounding on the door. Janeway and Joel Grey slip out through a hole in the wall of his place and walk down the street, doing their best to blend in by darting their gazes around and hiding their faces with their hands and generally acting as nervous and unnatural as possible. I'm sure they'll be fine. Janeway tries to make contact with the guy Neelix bought the Go Juice from. He's a member of the Resistance, but the guy's not home. Then the cops show up, led by Mr. Mokra himself, and Joel Grey is instantly like, "That motherfucker, I'll kill him!" Joel Grey is pissed because it was Mr. Mokra who arrested his wife. Janeway holds him back like, "Not so fast, killer." The Go Juice guy tries to sneak past the space Nazis in the crowd, but Mr. Mokra catches him and starts giving him a hassle, so Joel Grey marches forward and cuts the tension by performing a little improv pantomime. Mr. Mokra is like, "All right, get out of here, you harmless old doofus," and the space Nazis leave without arresting anyone. Countering fascist oppression with street clowning. It really works, according to multiple works of fiction. Not so sure about real life. Anyway, Janeway and Joel Grey meet with the Go Juice guy, and the Go Juice guy says, "Getting into the prison is basically impossible and you'll get yourself killed, but if you insist on trying, I'll tell you the way in and trade you some weapons for that fancy necklace." Janeway is reluctant to part with the necklace that Joel Grey gave her, knowing what it means to him, but Joel Grey says, "Do it if it will help us get your mother out." So they agree to meet another contact of the Go Juice guy in 3 hours to make the trade. The contact will be wearing a blue vest. Also, the Go Juice guy tells Janeway to cut Joel Grey loose because he's a coward and a crazy old man who's always telling stories. But Janeway's like, "Well, he saved our lives earlier with his mastery of vaudevillian physical comedy, so I think I'll keep him around, thanks." After the meeting, Joel Grey says to Janeway, "Don't believe what he said. I'm not a coward. I just wanted to keep you safe. Your mother wanted to fight, and I couldn't stop her. Eventually, she talked me into joining the fight, too. I was supposed to meet her one night when she was leading a raid against the Mokra, but I couldn't. I was too afraid. That's how the Mokra got her. She was still waiting for me when they arrested her. I never told you that because I knew you would hate me for it. Please forgive me, Ralkana." And Janeway just hugs him because, for real, how are you going to be mad at Joel Grey? Your cowardice led to my mom going to prison. It's okay, man. Don't worry about it. They go to meet the contact to trade for the weapons, but when Janeway sees the promised guy in the blue vest, she notices he's also wearing the same boots as the space Nazi cops, so she knows it's a trap. She pulls Joel Grey aside and says, "We'll have to find another way into the prison, and those sex workers over there have given me an idea that's just hackneyed enough to work." Meanwhile, B'Elanna has heard Tuvok screaming in pain from being tortured, and when the Mokra return him to their cell, she's like, "So, Vulcans holler like giant wussies when they get shit shoved under their fingernails too, huh?" Elsewhere, Janeway sachets up to one of the Nazi doofuses guarding the tunnels into the prison and flirts with him a little, talking him into sneaking off into the shadows with her, and when that happens, Joel Grey appears and knocks the guard out. Then Janeway grabs that guard's gun and uses it to shoot the other guard. Then she locks Joel Grey behind a force field for his own protection and promises to try and find his wife. On Voyager, the crew has been trying to find a way around the shields protecting the Mokra prison, and their efforts have been noticed by the Mokra, and now the Mokra are pissed. Mr. Mokra warns Chakotay that they're about to open fire on Voyager. At the same time, Janeway manages to short out the prison's entire shielding system by turning a couple of dials on one control panel. B'Elanna and Tuvok escape from their cell. On Voyager, Harry notices that the prison's shields are down, and Tom Paris volunteers to beam down and find their people. Tuvok and B'Elanna find Janeway, and so does Joel Grey, who ran into the prison when the force field shut off. He insists to Janeway that they go and find her mother, so Janeway tells Tuvok and B'Elanna how to get out, then starts off in the other direction with Joel Grey. Only they don't get very far. Mr. Mokra and the Space Nazi Brigade surround them. Mr. Mokra says to Joel Grey, "Look at you! You've never made it this far before." He explains to Janeway, this nutty old bastard goes off on these rescue missions of his every once in a while. He's still determined to save his wife, even though she's been dead for 12 years. He just can't seem to get it through his head how futile it is to challenge us. He didn't even learn that lesson when we killed his daughter. We've let him remain free as a reminder to the others, and now his foolishness has gotten you arrested. The Space Nazis start to drag Janeway off, but Joel Grey attacks Mr. Mokra. In the commotion, Janeway and the others manage to overpower the guards and take their guns. Joel Grey stabs Mr. Mokra in the chest, but Mr. Mokra throws him off and shoots him, then falls down and dies. Janeway rushes to the side of Joel, who is dying. She tells him that she is his daughter, and that her mother is all right, and that she got his letters. And she tells him that her mother forgives him, and so does she. And then he dies. Tom Paris arrives on the scene, and Janeway and the rest of the landing party beam away, but not before the Go-Juice guy promises Janeway that no one in the Resistance will forget Joel Grey's heroic sacrifice today. Back on Voyager a bit later, Janeway is in her ready room. Harry comes in to report that the ship is almost back to normal. Janeway thanks him, and after he's gone, she holds up the necklace Joel Grey gave her, the one that belonged to Ralkana's mother, whoever she was. The end! What a fucking ray of sunshine this one is, huh? Here's the thing about this episode. It's formulaic, it's predictable, it's not terribly creative or clever, it's full of plot contrivances and shortcuts and conveniences, but in the end, when it really counts, it works. The setup is pretty vague due to an unspecified cause. Voyager needs a thing to keep working, so the away team has visited this planet ruled by space Nazis to get the thing. That's fine, though. The details of the setup aren't important. What's important is to get Janeway together with Joel Grey's character, because that is the meat of the story. The other stuff, Tuvok and B'Elanna in prison, Chakotay fucking around with the space Nazis on Voyager, is there to kill time, provide something to cut away to when the Janeway-Joel Grey story needs a moment to breathe, and explain why Janeway is spending so much time with this lovable kook. Plot-wise, this one is pretty flabby. Janeway is rescued from the cops by Joel Grey in the cold open. She hangs out with him at his place all day before the cops finally show up pounding on the door. It later turns out that Joel Grey's character is well known to the cops, and the incident where he rescued Janeway took place out in the street in front of dozens of witnesses, not to mention the cops who were there. So why did it take so long for the cops to show up at Joel Grey's place? Why didn't they just go straight there as soon as they decided to look for Janeway? Also, when the cops do show up, it just so happens there's a hole in the back of Joel Grey's shack, and they're able to escape easily because the space Nazi cops didn't have anyone watching the rear. Okay. If we're chalking up the relative ease of Janeway and Joel's escape to the assumed incompetence of Nazi thugs, I'm all for that, but it still plays as a very convenient plot contrivance. The break into the prison is laughably easy. Despite being warned by the Go-Juice guy that wanting to break into the prison was basically a death wish, Janeway is able to just walk right in and proposition one of the guards, and that's really all it takes. Then she knocks out the force fields by operating a single control panel that's openly accessible in a corridor. They were supposed to have guns, but then they didn't get them. But then that turned out to be no problem at all because they just disarmed some guards and took their guns. There isn't a single obstacle presented to the characters in the entire episode that feels real. Everything feels like a token challenge to give the heroes something to do to move the story forward. No suspense, no genuine threats, no, oh shit, how are they going to get out of this one? Just obligatory, mechanical storytelling. But that's just the plot, and like I said, the meat of the story lies elsewhere. The only part of this that absolutely needs to work is the relationship between Janeway and Joel Grey's character, Caleb. Their portion of the story is no less formulaic or predictable than the rest of it, but a story can get away with being formulaic and predictable if it's executed well enough. And thanks to the performances of Kate Mulgrew and Joel Grey, I think this story does get away with it. Mulgrew draws a tricky assignment as Janeway this time around. We need to feel sympathy for Joel Grey's character, so Janeway can't just immediately dismiss or disillusion him. She has to treat him with some patience and compassion and an appropriate amount of gratitude since he did save her life and is trying to take care of her. But she also needs to keep her sense of purpose. She's got people in prison she needs to rescue. She's got a starship she's got to get back to. She can't just hang around and eat soup and role play as Joel Grey's daughter all goddamn day. She strikes the proper balance in her performance between Janeway's sympathy for this poor old guy and her impulse to get away from him so she can get on with her very important business. And Mulgrew finds a way to show us how, over the course of the episode, Janeway grows more protective of Caleb without making it obvious how deeply she's come to feel for him until the very end. For his part, Joel Grey gives one of the best, most naturalistic guest performances I've ever seen in a Star Trek show. In his hands, Caleb, this tangle of sentimental cliches, becomes a real person. He's aided by dialogue that is blessedly free of the sort of technobabble and ad hoc sci-fi vocabulary that frequently blemishes Star Trek shows. But what he does with that dialogue is something special. When he's trying to remember what he wrote in his most recent letter to his wife, and he says it out loud to Janeway, it sounds real. Like a sad old man struggling to remember something important. It sounds like a story anyone might tell, or hear their parent or grandparent tell. He doesn't say things like, I went out for a walk one morning and the light of the twin suns was glinting so beautifully off the many facets of the crystalline mountains of Jeweltopia in the distance, or some other made-up fantasy horseshit. He says, I walked by that old building where you used to play. It was cold, but I wore my sweater. It rained. I wonder if she can see the rain where she is. There's no bullshit to get between the audience and the actor giving the gentle, vulnerable human performance. Caleb is a tragic figure, and Grey puts that across effortlessly by seeming to simply inhabit the character. He's not a cartoon. He's not a raving lunatic. Most of the time, he seems sharp, lucid, fully aware of what's going on around him, certain of what he wants to do. But he also believes Janeway, a woman he's never met before, who isn't even from his planet, is his daughter. Is his delusion so deep that he really believes this, or does he know this isn't true? Does he know that his wife and daughter are actually dead, and he acts out this fantasy because he wants it to be true, because he hopes that maybe, if he tries hard enough to believe it, it will be true? I don't know. And crucially, I don't think it matters. What matters is that at the core of Caleb's character is a very simple, very sympathetic human need. He wants absolution. He has failed the people he loved the most, and he needs those people to know how sorry he is and to forgive him. In the end, as far as he knows, he receives that forgiveness. Janeway lies to him, but that lie is a kindness, a mercy, an act of love. In his final moments, he gets to be free of the guilt and the grief that has trapped him for so long. And before he goes, he gets to stick a knife in that Nazi bastard that arrested his wife, so that's got to feel pretty good. This is a bleak episode. This isn't about the Star Trek crew finding a planet, being ruled by a totalitarian police state, and fixing everything. If this had been a Star Trek the Original Series episode, Captain Kirk would have killed or arrested the head space Nazi and then turned to the resistance movement and said, "Congratulations, the space Nazis have fallen. You're free now. Good luck with that," and left. Here, that's never even a possibility. The Mokra are in charge when Voyager arrives at this planet, and the Mokra are in charge when Voyager leaves this planet, and it doesn't look like that's going to change anytime soon. The resistance movement is there, which is something, but the people who are being oppressed are probably going to remain oppressed for a long time to come. The episode's not about the good guys showing up and doing good on a societal scale. If Tuvok and B'Elanna hadn't been locked up and Janeway hadn't been shot, Voyager would presumably have left the planet as soon as the Go Juice had been obtained and never looked back. In that sense, it's a very un-Star Trek story. No one on that planet is any better off for the Voyager crew having been there. But I don't think it's fair to judge the episode negatively because of that. It's not that kind of story. The Mokra, their oppressive regime, they don't exist in the story to be overthrown. They exist to provide a context in which the story of Janeway and Calum can happen. They are antagonists, but the conflict between Voyager's crew and them isn't the point. Hell, even the conflict between Calum and them, as quixotic as it is, isn't the point. The point is what passes between Janeway and Calum at the very end. When he lays dying on the floor of that prison, and Janeway leans down and whispers to him, "She forgives you. We both do." That's the point. And despite everything else in the episode leading up to it that doesn't work, that feels off the shelf, that plays as perfunctory, that moment does work. And for me at least, it works well enough to make the rest of the episode worth it. A Voyager episode that I like because I care about the characters? There aren't very many of those. But they do exist. Those are my thoughts on Resistance. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. Join me next time as this batch of reviews concludes with one last draw from the grab bag. We'll move to Star Trek Enterprise to review an episode from that show's first season. Its third episode ever, in fact, Fight or Flight. That's next week. See you then. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.